Hello and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast YouTube channel. My name is Sam and this is week 21 of our F1 Fantasy Show. In this week, we'll be looking back to see how we did in Mexico, talk about price changes and looking ahead to this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, going through Matt's team and any alternatives you might look to swap in before the deadline. But before anything else, let's introduce our fancy expert, Matt Collier. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, thank you, Sam. Yeah, we're near the very end of the season, just two races to go, and yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to it. It's a shame that there's not more riding on these two races in terms of the drivers and constructor points, but I tell you, there is a lot riding on these final races in terms of fantasy points. Let's look back at Mexico and see where we sit in the Scenario 7 podcast fantasy table. Now, we always start with Performer of the Week, where we look at the person who got the most points in the last race. And in Mexico, that was DMG, with the team name very much mistaken one, with 220 points. His team included Verstappen, who got him 49 points, Perez, who got him 28, Sainz, his turbo driver, got him 60, Norris, who got 9, Guan Yu Zhou, who got 1, and Mercedes, who got him 73. And 220 points, very good effort. But let's look at the top of the table. And it's not really a shock, let's be honest. It's Andrew T retaining his spot at the top of the table with 4,121 points. He is the only driver in the top five that still has their mega driver to play. And I'm guessing he is saving it for Abu Dhabi for an explosive final race. But let us know if you're doing otherwise, Andy, as I know you like to message us on Twitter and we'll probably be watching this video. Let's move on to you now, Matt. So you have dropped a place. You're down to 12th on 3,761 points. Without going into too much detail, were you pleased with your performance in Mexico?
I guess it was okay. The main thing that let me down was not having Mercedes asset and Ferrari just not turning up. And yeah, I was 16th for the week, so it could have been better, could have been worse.
Yes, I mean 16th is still very solid considering you didn't use like a wild card or a mega driver. 16th is still a solid position. Now to me, and I sit in 27th place on 3,460 points. I got 213 points last race, which was the fourth best in the league. But despite this, I haven't moved any places. So that Mega Driver did wonders. I mean, I thought, right, Mega Driver in Mexico, no one's really going to play it in Mexico. So this is my opportunity to shoot up the table. But it really hasn't played out that way. I had Charles Leclerc, who had 18 points. Perez, who was my mega driver, who got me 84. Sebastian Vettel was my turbo driver, who got 26. Bottas, who got 7. Magnussen, who got 1. And Red Bull, who got 77. With most players around me still having their mega driver to play, I am a bit worried that in the final two races, I'm going to drop a few positions. So I'm going to need to be on my A game, picking the best drivers possible for the last two. So we'll have to see what happens. But I worry that I could drop down quite significantly. Let's go more in depth with last week's team. Matt, can you talk us through your selection for Mexico?
Yeah, sure. So I already touched briefly on where I finished. I was 16th for the week. We got a total of 187 points. The main letdown really was Ferrari not performing and Mercedes having a very strong weekend out in Mexico. A lot of people transferred in the likes of Hamilton and Mercedes. So yeah, I'll go through each of the drivers and how their points were out in Mexico. First up, Alonso got me 3 points. Another reliability DNF problem. He did get his qualifying streak, so that's why he still managed to get a positive 3 points. But yeah, once again, that Alpine reliability is looking really bad. And yeah, you're surely going to have to take another engine penalty at Brazil, Abu Dhabi. And yeah, on to the next driver. Perez got me 28 points. Finished on the podium and had a very good race. Ken Magnussen got 1 point. I remember watching FP1 and seeing, I think it was Fittipaldi in the FP1 session, and I think it came to a stop, and I was like, oh no, Magnussen going to have to take a new gearbox, and that kind of shows why I only managed to get 1 point, because he had to basically start at the back with Stroll. Carlos Sainz, my turbo driver, he got 60 points, and yeah, despite Ferrari not having the best of weekends, Sainz finished ahead of Leclerc, which was a bit surprising, got me 60 points, and obviously the beat teammate and out qualified teammate bonus points. And then Leclerc got me 18 points, and yeah, he didn't look on the pace, especially to his teammate, and Ferrari definitely turned down their power. And then as my constructor, Red Bull got me 77 points, and yeah, very good result for the constructor, toned to 187 points. Not the best weekend, but not the worst.
Yeah, a very solid weekend. Time to look at some price changes. And as always, there have been several fluctuations since the last race and will continue to be until the deadline. What we talk about now is the prices at the time of recording and are likely to change. So, Matt, let's start with the drivers. What changes stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the market's always going to be manic, and there's always going to be loads of drops and increases. But yeah, I'll start with the drivers. Verstappen has increased by 0.8 million. He's gone from 33 million up to 33.8 million. Lewis Hamilton, after a very good weekend out in Mexico, has increased by 0.4. He's gone from 21.8 million up to 22.2 million. Fernando Alonso has decreased by 0.6 million. He's gone from 10.7 down to 10.1 million. And yeah, I explained earlier, another reliability problem hindered him this race. And then the main changes for the constructors, Red Bull once again in the constructor changes. They've increased by 1 million. They've gone from 38.8 million up to 39.8 million. Increase of 1 million. Alfa Romeo, they've decreased by 0.7 million, despite Bottas having quite a good weekend, but then falling back in the race. He's still got points. But yeah, they've gone from 6.6 million down to 5.9 million. Then Alpine have decreased by 0.4. They've gone from 13.3 million down to 12.9 million. And yeah, they're the main price changes.
Yeah, some interesting changes there. Let's now look to the team you're going to be deploying this week. And of course, we need to preface this with the fact that this is subject to change, as the deadline is not until Friday, with it being a sprint weekend, and practice sessions can be used as an insight into how teams will perform. The first driver is Lando Norris, coming in for the very unlucky Fernando Alonso, costing 15.1 million. Why did you make this change?
First of all, there's only one practice session we could base the forces off, because it's FP1, it's straight to qualifying. But yeah, on to the change. Yeah, Alonso's reliability problems just keep happening, and I've got a lot of Alonso DNS throughout the season. It's a real shame because he's got so much talent, and yeah, the Alpine's just so unreliable. Yeah, so I brought in Lando Norris. He's got a qualifying streak this weekend, so he'll get an extra +5 if he qualifies in the top 10. And yeah, he's just a much more consistent driver. That's why he's got so many more points compared to Alonso. And yeah, that's why I've brought him into my team.
Yeah, it's been frustrating as a regular Fernando Alonso. I don't know how to describe it. I have Fernando Alonso on my team for the majority of this year and have always been like, oh, I'm sure the reliability will get better. it'll level out, but it just hasn't seemed to yet. Never know. Brazil and Abu Dhabi, maybe he'll have two good races, but it has been a shame. Untapped potential this season. Sergio Perez keeps his place, priced at 23.1 million. He got a podium in Mexico, coming third. Why does he stay in your team?
Yeah, he's in a very quick Red Bull, finished on the podium out in Mexico, and he also got a race streak this weekend. So if he finishes in the top 10 in the race, you'll get an extra plus 10 points. So yeah, that's why I've kept him in my team.
Seems fair enough. Always got to have at least one Red Bull. Kevin Magnussen also keeps his place, valued at 6.4 million. I noticed this week that he had no movement in his price momentum, either going up or down. It hasn't changed at all. But why does he stay in your team?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, mainly because of his high ownership, and yeah, sometimes Haas are like really good and sometimes they're awful. Um, for example, like USA, he was had a brilliant race and finishing the points, but then Belgium, they're basically at the back of the grid and had an awful race. So you just don't know what you're going to get with Haas. There are other options around that price range, but yeah, I've kept Magnussen for this weekend.
Yeah, but potential to switch them out if practice sessions aren't looking good. Carlos Sainz is the only Ferrari driver in your team this weekend and is your turbo driver, costing 18.7 million. Why is Sainz in your team?
He's kind of the go-to kind of turbo driver. It's interesting to see his price. I thought way back that he probably would have exceeded the 20 million, but yeah, it looks like he's not going to reach that. And yeah, of course there are bold alternatives. Remember, a few people did Norris at USA and benefited, but yeah, the reason he's my turbo driver is because he's in a quick Ferrari, and yeah, with it being a sprint race this weekend, you want to have a driver that's at the top of the grid. So yeah, that's why he's my turbo driver.
Yeah, well, you talk about people going bold. I had Sebastian Vettel as my turbo driver in Mexico, so going bold is always the way. As I mentioned, Charles Leclerc is on his way out, despite being a mainstay this year, being replaced by world champion Max Verstappen. 33.8 million. Why did you now decide to bring in Supermax?
Yeah, Ferrari's pace just didn't look very good around Mexico, and yeah, even Sainz outperformed Leclerc, and yeah, Verstappen's in a very quick Red Bull, and yeah, I expect a lot of people to have Verstappen for Brazil this weekend. So yeah, that's why I brought him into my team.
Yeah, and now to your constructor, and Red Bull have also been shown the door, replaced by the Silver Arrows Mercedes. Why did you swap these constructors? Is it to do with the fact that you had Perez and Verstappen in the team as your drivers anyway?
The very honest and simple reason, well, is because my budget is 0.1 million. Um, so it literally fits the glove perfectly. I've covered Red Bull, I've got Ferrari, and I've got Mercedes, my constructor. And yeah, that's a very good weekend out in Mexico. They definitely looked very quick and probably could have fighted for the win better if it wasn't for their strategy decision. So yeah, so I brought Mercedes into my team, fitting the glove nicely with zero point 0.1 in the bank.
Yeah, I love that. I've got to say your budget management this year has been so good. The fact that there's two races to go and you have a Ferrari, two Red Bulls, and Mercedes as your constructor, that's pretty good going. That's not bad at all. And Lando Norris. I mean, come on, doing well. We've gone through your team now, but what are some alternatives you are potentially looking to swap in before the deadline? And the people at home could potentially look at to put in their teams.
Yeah, so on each show I go through three alternatives. I choose one constructor and two drivers. The constructor chosen this weekend is Ferrari. They're currently priced at 29.3 million. They've got a qualifying streak this weekend. So if Sainz and Leclerc qualify in the top 10 on Friday. They'll get extra +5 points. Onto the two drivers. I've gone with Bottas. He's currently priced at 8.2 million. And yeah, in the last two races, he's qualified in the top 10. Of course, scored points out in Mexico. Another driver I've gone for is Pierre Gasly, currently priced at 8.2 million. And of course, he had a brilliant race out in 2019, finishing P2, and this is probably one of his favourite tracks. So yeah, they're alternatives you should consider for your team.
Yeah, some interesting picks there. I'm still contemplating whether to keep Bottas again for this week or to get rid of him. But your insight there saying he's an alternative pick, maybe I should keep him in. Who knows? But that wraps up our video. I hope you found it helpful. A reminder that the deadline for changes is qualifying on Friday, not Saturday. Friday this week. So get your team finalised by then. Remember to like and subscribe. Follow us on our socials, linked down below, with our fancy league code if you would still like to join with 2 races left. I mean, if you do, fair play, it's up to you. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.